So today we'll begin chapter 2 of portrait. So here we see an intervening period while Stephen changes school from Congloes Wood College. He is taken away and admitted to Belvedere College, another Jesuit-run school. In this intervening period, he comes to stay with his uncle Charles at a small town called Black Rock, and there Uncle Charles makes him run so that he has physical exercise and he can develop his muscles. So every morning Uncle Charles made him run. During the first part of the summer in Black Rock, Uncle Charles was Stephen's constant companion. So you see here again the narrative seems to be third person narrative, because Stephen doesn't say that Uncle Charles was my companion. So the narrative technique in this novel moves, or we may say the point of view moves from third person to first person. So wherever Joyce wants to follow the stream of consciousness technique, there it seems that it is in the first person, but actually Stephen hardly ever says I, very rarely. So it is not a conventional first person, but it is a kind of narration where third person narration gives the impression of the first person. So even though it is a third person narration, we have the impression that we have an insight into Stephen's psyche. And Joyce learned this technique from the French novelist Flaubert. But at other places, when Joyce is not delving into Stephen's psyche, then he is just describing something or narrating something, then we have this kind of a narration which is pretty much conventional third person narration. So during the morning he was made to do exercise, and somehow he was kept busy throughout the day, and he was free in the evening. So 2 pages later, page 58 in my edition, his evenings were his own. So when he is free during the evening, then he reads literature, and he particularly read one novel, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, the French novelist. It is a story of kind of revenge. The central protagonist of the novel was betrayed by his friend who put him into a prison, an infamous prison, Chateau d'If, in on an island, and there he comes into touch with another prisoner, an old man who knew or who had concealed secret treasure on an island. So somehow this man comes out of the prison and gets access to the treasure, because the old man dies in the prison, and then he parades himself as Count of Monte Cristo and mixes with the aristocratic people and then takes revenge upon his friend who had betrayed him and put him into prison. So his friend had not only put him into prison and had taken all his wealth, whatever was there, but also married his wife. Now his wife was not really, she did not really betray him. She got the news that he had died in prison, and therefore she married this other man. But to the hero of the novel, in his eyes, the friend as well as his past wife, they betrayed him. So he takes revenge on them, but his revenge on his wife is very kind of soft. This image of the dark avenger haunted Stephen's imagination, and the name of the wife, the lady on whom the Count of Monte Cristo had taken revenge, was Mercedes. So Mercedes was both the lover of the Count, the past wife, as well as a girl or lady who later he just took revenge by revealing his identity yet not accepting her. So in Stephen's imagination, the figure of Mercedes loomed large. His evenings were his own, and he pored over a ragged translation of the Count of Monte Cristo. The figure of that dark avenger stood forth in his mind for whatever he had heard or divined in childhood of the strange and terrible. At night he built up on the parlour table an image of the wonderful island cave out of transfers and paper flowers and coloured tissue paper and strips of the silver and golden paper in which chocolate is wrapped. When he had broken up this scenery, weary of its tinsel, there would come to his mind the bright picture of Marseille, of sunny trellises and of Mercedes. So the setting of this novel is Marseille, a port city in France. So Stephen would think of Marseille and of Mercedes, and in this house he told himself another Mercedes lived. So when he outside Black Rock on the road that led to the mountain stood a small whitewashed house, and Stephen imagined that in that house another Mercedes lived, and in his imagination he lived through a long train of adventures marvelous as those in the book itself, towards the close of which there appeared an image of himself grown older and sadder, standing in a moonlit garden with Mercedes, who had so many years before slighted his love, and with a sadly proud gesture of refusal saying, "Madam, I never eat muscatel grapes." A quotation from the novel. So Stephen imagined that he was taking revenge by refusing the girl, and actually Mercedes is one of the female figures which haunts Stephen's imagination. Only that she is a figure from books, from novels. The other female figures like Eileen or Emma Clary or even Virgin Mary, so all these female figures, they stand for his pursuit in the unconscious, his pursuit for an anima that would fulfill him. So this is according to Jungian theory. Every boy or every man looks for an anima, and every girl looks for an animus to fulfill himself or herself. So in Stephen's psyche, all the female figures tend to blend and merge. So whether it is Virgin Mary, the female figure who protects others, whether it is Virgin Mary, a figure from religion, or Mercedes, a figure from novels, or real girls in his life, they all tend to blend in Stephen's psyche. 2 pages later, he returned to Mercedes, and as he brooded upon her image, a strange unrest crept into his blood. Sometimes a fever gathered within him and led him to rove alone in the evenings along the quiet avenue. So this is how Joyce presents the hormonal changes in Stephen, the development of his libido. So when a boy gradually grows up and becomes an adolescent, all the hormones rage in him, like the same with adolescent girls, and the sex drive begins to emerge and is felt very strongly because it emerges for the first time. And but the boy or the girl, they would not know what this new desire is or this new feeling is, and therefore it would appear to Stephen as a strange unrest because it is not understood. Sometimes a fever gathered within him and led him to rove alone. The peace of the gardens and the kindly lights in the windows poured a tender influence into his restless heart. So the emphasis is on restlessness. The peace of the gardens and the kindly lights in the windows poured a tender influence into his restless heart. The noise of children at play annoyed him, and their silly voices made him feel, even more keenly than he had felt at Clongoes, that he was different from others. So this is the first time that this awareness of being different strikes Stephen, and he is annoyed by the noises which children were making, which says that Stephen felt that he was not one of the children. He had a very different kind of temperament or a different kind of mind. So gradually in course of the novel, this idea of being different, the idea of being very different from conventional boys would be represented again and again to suggest the growth of the psyche of an artist. So an artist would always feel different from other people because he or she would be observant of people, would prefer to be isolated, sometimes would feel alienated from others. So the temperament of an artist is different, and Stephen gradually comes to understand how he is different from others. He did not want to play, he wanted to meet in the real world the unsubstantial image which his soul so constantly beheld. So this unsubstantial image is not defined here. What image? We already know that the image of Mercedes, or for that matter Emma Clary, or image of any girl, that is there in Stephen's mind, and that is pursued throughout the novel. Stephen pursues this image, and at the end of the novel it is the bird girl image, the girl standing on the beach in the water, who looked like the girl who looked like a bird. So that is the final image. But all these images blend, and these images stand not only for Stephen's pursuit of his anima, or not only a kind of libidinal pursuit, but they also stand for Stephen's pursuit of beauty or art. So in the psyche of the artist, the pursuit of desire, the pursuit of libido somehow gets entangled with the pursuit of beauty or the pursuit of art. So Stephen wanted to meet this unsubstantial image in the real world. He did not know where to seek it or how, but a premonition which led him on told him that this image would, without any overt act of his, encounter him. They would meet quietly as if they had known each other and had made their tryst, perhaps at one of the gates or in some more secret place. They would be alone, surrounded by darkness and silence, and in that moment of supreme tenderness, he would be transfigured. So you see, here is an image of transfiguration, metamorphosis, with which the novel opened. The epigraph at the beginning of the novel is from Ovid's Metamorphosis. So he would be transfigured, he would fade into something impalpable under her eyes, and then in a moment he would be transfigured. Weakness and timidity and inexperience would fall from him in that magic moment. So for Stephen, it is both the awareness of his weakness and timidity, but these would be transcended at a particular magic moment. So this moment suggested is a moment of epiphany, a moment of revelation, which is also a moment of transfiguration for Stephen. But at the moment, this remains unrealized. So we will see that a little later Emma Clary will be referred to, and the image of Mercedes and Emma Clary would merge and would blend as a search for anima, which I already told you. Then there is a reference of Stephen's family moving house, shifting. Now Joyce's family often had to move, very frequently had to move from one place to other, because his father did not earn much, and the landlords would raise their rent as usual, and then he would have to move to find a cheaper place. So in this novel also there are references to moving house and the increasing poverty of Stephen's family, and this financial distress of the family, the financial problem. Stephen's father tells him, "There is a crack of the whip left in me yet, Stephen, old chap," said Mr. Dedalus, poking at the dull fire with fierce energy. "We are not dead yet, sonny, no, by the Lord Jesus, God forgive me, not half dead." So they moved to Dublin. Mr. Dedalus, who is presented in the image of Joyce's father, who is represented as a very jolly person, but also he grows sad as his financial status falls, but he is trying to encourage his son at the moment. And then there is some description of Dublin, and that is something with which Joyce was, involved throughout his literary career. He represented Dublin in most of his works. Here also we have a representation of Dublin. Dublin was a new and complex sensation. In the beginning he contented himself with circling timidly round the neighbouring square, or at most going halfway down one of the side streets, but when he had made a skeletal map of the city in his mind, he followed boldly one of its central lines until he reached the custom house. Now Joyce represented Dublin so well in his novel and his stories that it is said that even if Dublin was by chance destroyed, the city can be resurrected, recreated completely following Joyce's description. So this mental map is actually true. Joyce had an exact map of the city in his mind. He passed unchallenged among the docks and along the quays, wondering at the multitude of corks that lay bobbing on the surface of the water in a thick yellow scum, at the crowds of quay porters and the rumbling carts and the ill-dressed bearded policemen. So this sentence here, he passed unchallenged, this reminds one of Joyce's story Araby, which is often in undergraduate syllabus in many places. There also a young boy goes to a fair. The name of the fair is Araby. He had to wait very late in the evening till his father would return and give him some money to go to the fair, and he finally gets the money from his father, and when he goes to the fair, Araby, there he finds that most of the shops are already closed. It is so late. So it is a kind of a story of disappointment, adventure, and so on. And there also the young boy is represented as going like a knight into this adventurous journey, and without being challenged. So here also, in this novel also, we find this sentence that he passed unchallenged, as if a knight is undertaking an adventure and expecting challenge, but passes unchallenged. So in these sections, when Joyce describes the town or the city, any part of the city or so on, these are written in realistic styles, and Joyce was a master of realism. So I have probably already told you that we have two styles used alternately in this novel. Sometimes we have the realistic style, and then we have the kind of stream of consciousness style, where the psyche of the hero is followed. The vastness and strangeness of the life suggested to him by the bales of merchandise stalked along the walls or swung aloft out of the holds of steamers wakened again in him the unrest which had sent him wandering in the evening from garden to garden in search of Mercedes. So this unrest, how do we define it? It is quite clear that Stephen's pursuit is that of Mercedes, which means that his pursuit for his anima. But this unrest is not only a libidinal unrest, as I told you, because it is also a search for beauty. So when he looks at this vast and strange life in the life of the town or the port region, people working, ordinary men, sailors and so on, prostitutes sometimes. So this rich life sends so many stimuli to him, and he is stimulated by so many sensations, and he yet does not know what to do with these sensations. Later we will see that that he would often try to write a poem or something. So as an artist, he would feel that he should be able to change or to transform the ugliness of this world in the beauty of his art. So at the moment, Stephen lives a life of imagination, and as he looks at this part of Dublin, the docks, and he thinks that he is in Marseille and he looks for Mercedes. Then he describes how with his mother he sometimes visited some relatives in Dublin, and in one of the relatives' house, children come with their parents in social parties, social get-togethers, and there Stephen looks at a little girl, and as a child he is asked to perform something and he sings a song. But when he had sung his song and withdrawn into a snug corner of the room, he began to taste the joy of his loneliness. So we see that Stephen feels lonely even though he is a child. So already the loneliness, which is a part of an artist's experience, uh, is felt by Stephen. So he is in the midst of mirth, social gathering, yet he feels alone. The mirth which in the beginning of the evening had seemed to him false and trivial was like a soothing air to him, passing gaily by his senses, hiding from other eyes the feverish agitation of his blood, while through the circling of the dancers and amid the music and laughter, her glance travelled to his corner, flattering, taunting, searching, exciting his heart. You see the mastery of the narration. The author never tells us that, Stephen finds that he is being looked at by the girl is at the other corner of the room and she is looking at him. Stephen has this new experience, new sensation, and he feels that his embarrassment or agitation should be concealed from others. So all these things we have to surmise, we have to guess from this very compact stream of consciousness kind of narration. And contrary to conventional boy-girl meeting, where the experience is usually described from the point of view of the male or the boy, and the male gaze, that is boys or men who look at girls or women, it stands for an expression of desire, libido, whatever. Here Joyce reverses this convention and represents the female gaze. So it is the girl who is looking at Stephen, and Joyce describes the impact of this gaze on Stephen. So what is the impact? He feels flattering, taunting, searching, exciting. So the gaze of the girl to be flattering, taunting. These are contradictory, but it is possible that the girl admires the boy, but at the same time the boy feels a little bit humiliated or taunted by the gaze, searching and exciting his heart. Then after this, they all leave, and there is a leave-taking scene, and Stephen climbs onto the steps of the tram and they part, and Stephen feels that there should be a parting kiss, but that does not happen. So it is a description of this episode of the parting, and the tram was of course horse drawn. It was the last tram. The lank brown horses knew it and shook their bells to the clear sight in admonition. The conductor talked with the driver, both nodding often in the green light of the lamp. On the empty seats of the tram were scattered a few colored tickets. No sound of footsteps came up or down the road. No sound broke the peace of the night, save when the lank brown horses rubbed their noses together and shook their bells. So this is, you see, a realistic description. The description of the horses and so on, which will be alternated by description of Stephen's mind. They seemed to listen, he on the upper step and she on the lower. She came up to his step many times and went down to hers again. Between her phrases, and once or twice stood close beside him for some moments on the upper step. It was Stephen who was taking the tram, and the girl came up to the last step, lower step, and Stephen was on the upper step. Forgetting to go down and then went down, his heart danced upon her movements like a cork upon a tide. So a beautiful simile to express the restlessness of Stephen's heart. He heard what her eyes said to him from beneath their cowl, and knew that in some dim past, whether in life or in reverie, he had heard their tale before. He saw her urge her vanities, her fine dress and sash and long black stockings, and knew that he had yielded to them 1,000 times. So this is how love is often experienced by people when people tend to think that it is a kind of a repetition, the experience is not new but something like that happened before, suggesting that this is a kind of primal urge which always appears to be ancient, it is never new. And Stephen is looking at the girl, her vanities and her dress, and then we see that there are references to the particular parts of her dress, like her stockings, and particular parts of her body, her legs. So this suggests that Stephen is attracted by the girl, of course, but also by particular parts of her body. And according to Freudian psychology, this is called fetish, Fetish. So fetish is sometimes said to be a kind of perversion, that is, when somebody is attracted not to the entire person but to particular parts of the body of the person. So we see that Joyce absorbs the teachings of modern psychology, and both the teachings of Freud as well as of Jung, and these are hallmarks of a modern novel. So it is modern because it pays attention to aspects of our lives which were which we came to understand only because of the contribution of modern psychology. And then Stephen thinks, she too wants me to catch hold of her, he thought. That's why she came with me to the tram. I could easily catch hold of her when she comes up to my step. Nobody is looking. I could hold her and kiss her. So you see here that nobody is looking. So there is a sense of guilt, as if it is wrong to kiss a girl. And this sense of guilt is drilled in his psyche by his Jesuit education, Roman Catholic education, which looks at any form of sexual activity as sinful. And unfortunately, from the English puritanical, the English were mostly puritanical, from them we Bengali middle class people also borrowed this sense of guilt about sex. In the Indian tradition, on the other hand, there is nothing covert or nothing that is against rules of art or so on in the matters of sex, or in Indian culture, in ancient Indian culture, people were free about sex, which we find the evidence in our temples, sculptures, and so on. Sex is not only that sex is not concealed, but overtly depicted on our temples. But we lost that classical Indian attitude towards sex because of the British domination for so many hundreds of years. So here we see that in Stephen's psyche the sexual urge is accompanied by a sense of guilt. However, Stephen thinks that he could have kissed her, but he could not kiss her because of his inhibition. And this inhibition has been drilled into his psyche, as I said, by his Roman Catholic education. But when he could not kiss her, he wrote about this experience, this encounter on the last tram with this girl in a poem. And in that poem, he makes the two characters kiss each other. So we may say that through his art, he is able to give expression to something which actually did not happen in reality. So he was able to transcend the limitations of reality through art. Now, about this, Freud had theorized that sexual urges are sublimated in art, and therefore poets and writers, artists, they would sublimate this sexual activity or experience in their art. So when it is expressed in art, then it is acceptable to society, but the real act is unacceptable. Stephen writes a poem following Byron. Lord Byron, whose famous poem is Don Juan, which is about a character in Spanish literature who was well known for his love adventures with a great number of women. Byron was very influential upon young poets, and in this novel we see that Stephen argues with one of his classmates about who is the greatest poet. So at that time, Lord Tennyson was the poet laureate of England. So his classmate tells him that Tennyson was the greatest poet, but Stephen said that no, Lord Byron was the greatest. So at that moment, Byron was more of a revolutionary poet, challenging the establishment by writing about love adventures and other things which were not completely acceptable. Tennyson, on the other hand, supported the institution, represented the institution by being the poet laureate, and would write a different kind of poetry. So Stephen imitates Byron, and Byron would often write the abbreviation of the names, say, of the girl who is described in the poem. Similarly, here Stephen gives the title to his poem to EC. Instead of giving the full name Emma Clary, he writes to EC, imitating Byron. He knew it was right to begin so. On the top he of course writes AMDG, that is the Jesuit motto, remembering God. And then he writes to EC. He knew it was right to begin so, for he had seen similar titles in the collected poems of Lord Byron. Some undefined sorrow was hidden in the heart of the protagonists. As they stood in silence beneath the leafless trees, and when the moment of farewell had come, the kiss, which had been withheld by one, was given by both. After this, the letters LDS were written at the foot of the page, and having hidden the book, he went into his mother's bedroom and gazed at his face for a long time in the mirror of her dressing table. So, imitating poets, he would write his name also in abbreviations, and then he would hide it and then look at the mirror and look at his face. So it also indicates Stephen's discovery of himself and awareness of himself as a lover or as a poet. So he is an aspiring poet, even though he does not always succeed. Then there is a conversation between Stephen's father and mother regarding where should Stephen be admitted, and both of them agree that he should not be admitted to the Christian Brothers school, because the Christian Brothers they were not very affluent, so Stephen won't be very comfortable in their school, and they all agree that the Jesuits were much richer, much more affluent, and therefore if Stephen is admitted to Belvedere, then he would be more comfortable. And this dialogue is presented in a very realistic manner, and Mr. Daedalus is represented through these dialogues, and he tells Stephen, "Now then, Stephen," he said, "you must put your shoulder to the wheel, old chap. You have a very long, fine holiday." So his holidays would come to an end, and he would be admitted to a new school. And then he also, Mr. Daedalus, speaks to his younger son, because he had many sons and daughters, younger son Maurice, and then he tells Stephen's mother that how he had a chat with the rector about that event, the provincial, about that event when Stephen complained to the rector regarding Father Dolan, who beat him up, and they had a hearty laugh. So we see that Stephen's parents are indulgent about their son, and the Jesuit fathers also did not mind that Stephen had complained against one of them, and they took it with humor, and this actually was an indication of Stephen's personality, which was growing at this moment, and therefore Joyce expresses the idea that Stephen's psyche is developing from one stage to another. So in the next depictions, representations, Stephen will be a little older than he was while at Clongoes Wood College. Right. So we'll stop here today, unless you have any questions. The whole purpose of Joyce in this novel is to represent that Stephen tries to write poetry from time to time, and he tries to transform his experience, realistic experience, through his art, through his poetry, into something sublime or something beautiful. But there is no indication that his poems are successful. Ultimately, Stephen will not be successful as a poet, which we come to know from Joyce's later novel, his most famous novel Ulysses, where Stephen is depicted as an ordinary man. He is a failed poet, like many others. Most people at adolescence try to write poetry, but they do not succeed later to become a poet. So in this novel, Joyce keeps an ironic distance with Stephen and sometimes even laughs at the character or mocks the character. Uh, the character that is assumes himself to be a budding poet, a rising poet or so, but actually fails in creating great art. So what do you think about the episode of The Last Tramp? So it is a tantalizing situation. The girl is very near to Stephen, and Stephen would have been able to kiss her very easily, but he doesn't. But that is no indication that he didn't want to. He wanted, but he couldn't because of his inhibitions. And these inhibitions are drilled in him by his Roman Catholic education. But then he uses his art, the art of poetry, to sublimate this experience, and in his poem he allows the characters to kiss each other. So the fulfillment which was denied in reality becomes possible in art. So for Stephen, art becomes some kind of a replacement for real experience.